religion is one of those weird topics that everyone at first has some sort of hesitation to, because it's so fragile,
Mm.
with like with complete reason. It's a lot of people's complete worldviews are built around the religion.
Right.
So even though it's religion, it gets tossed. It's a topic that everyone talks about all the time, and now I think that most people have learned to have thick skin about it when it's just jokes, when we're just talking about religion. Oh yeah, God in the sky. People just take it. But then if you really sit down with someone and you start to like pry and you're like, hey, so do you really believe it? Like that's when, things start to get, overwhelming really quick. Um, I think uh, uh, a good place to start with the Jehovah's Witnesses first would be a little bit of their history
Yeah,
with
tell
how
us
they
what they're all
started.
about. Yeah, tell us how they
Yeah,
started and what their history is
and
like.
then once I bring everyone up to speed a little bit, I think that I can start pitching in sort of how it impacted me and the insight that I've been able to gain, because I think we need first like a frame of reference for how they started.
Okay.
This started. This came from a time in America. This was in the 1860s. In the 1860s, it was a very weird time in America because there was a lot of what I like to call like dead time, just nothing going on, and just literally just people would just wake up, go to work at the plant, just go sow, go work the fields, and get back home, and that's it. And there was nothing else going on. And a lot of people, like were religious, and Charles Taze Russell came around in this time. I think he was born in 18, I'm not sure when, 1852, I think. I'm cheating. I got my notes. So I got
That's
some
okay.
dates for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Charles Taze Russell was born in 52, and he didn't really get started into religion until he was about in his 20s. And it this is the night when it starts. If you read Jehovah's Witness literature, this is even how they started. And
Mm.
I've read some of the Jehovah's Witnesses literature on their own history,
Hmm.
and it is whitewashed, but for the most part, you can sort of get a good narrative from it. And it pretty much just talks about Charles Taze Russell being a seeker. He didn't have anything solid. He would just go from pastors to pastors. He would just go from church to church. And the witnesses like to romanticize it like this. This is the words that they put it in. They say that
Okay.
one cool evening he was walking by, down Federal Avenue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he heard singing from a basement. And
Hmm.
this is the story. This is the story that gets rehashed. He walks by the basement, walks down into the basement, and he sees a group of Bible students just singing, and just and then they stop and then they start, talking about the Bible, and then someone gives a speech, and Charles Taze Russell is immediately just filled with passion,
Mm.
and he knows that he found something, and he knows that he wants to keep reading and studying about the Bible. So he starts studying. Him and his friends, they start, they make a book club, and every
Okay.
week they get together and they start reading, they start talking. They start talking with the local intellectuals, and this is where other people like Ellen White, from the Seventh Day Adventists,
LNG
this
White.
is
Yeah.
where they come in. There's this huge melting pot of ideas. People are bouncing. People are trying to get some sort of handle on the Bible and what it means. Because again, like I honestly think that a lot of it has to do with, the vacuum of the situation. Not a lot of people knew what the Bible was, and we're going in the late 1800s. Things are ramping up. Industrialization is picking up. Rhetoric is picking up, but it's not quite there yet. Yep.
So, well, just to touch on what you were saying there, a lot of people, even to this day, don't really read their Bible. They're kind of told what the Bible says. The
Hmm.
Bible says this, the Bible says this, but there's not a lot of people who've actually sat down and read it cover to cover. And a
Right.
lot of us who are atheists say that the quickest path to atheism is to read the Bible because it's
Right.
so full of like child molestation, murder, rape, talking animals, magic and witchcraft. It's full of all these horrible things. Not magic and witchcraft are not horrible, but I'm just saying it's full of all these things that in the 20th 21st century that we'd find really gross. Like telling people how to own other people, how to own slaves, where to buy your slaves from, kill all these people here, but keep all the female children who haven't known a man for yourself. That's just basically telling them to pick up all these little kids and, rape them or
Yeah.
whatever for themselves. But like what you were saying, back in those days, people didn't have a full grasp and didn't really read the Bible, because looking back at Bible history, it's been written in Hebrew, and it was written then it was written into Greek, then it was translated into English, right? And before Martin Luther King, no one
Martin Luther.
yeah, Martin Luther King
translated the Bible.
Yeah, he translated it so the average man could read it.
Right.
And before that, no one really knew it. They were just basically told, this is what the Bible says, you should do this.
Yeah,
And so
even some of the later stories were like dragons and snake swords, and like you get near the apocalypse and it gets really wild.
It gets like an acid trip, bro.
Jesus isn't going to come back in robes. He's going to come back all distorted from what I've heard of the Bible's ending.
That is the detail that all these early Bible students, and this is actually like a phase in America's history. It's called the Bible student phase. And the Bible student phase is what gave birth to the Seventh-day Adventists, as well as the Jehovah's Witness and other different denominations. Mm-hmm. And they were all obsessed over the millennium. So in the Bible, at the end, in Revelation, there's this prophecy that sort of specifies that after, Armageddon comes, after the last day or whatever, there's going to be a millennium of Jesus Christ's reign. And this is where it gets really trippy, because this is where Jesus talks about how, all the things that will lead up to the thing. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, they got obsessed originally with that millennium and with Jesus' return, the second coming. And that's when fuckery started, because they started using that as we're in the last days, you guys better come, and join with us. And they got really, really fixated on several last days. Like the Jehovah's Witnesses have a really bad track record of trying to predict the doomsday, and they haven't hit it yet,
Right.
And
predicted several times.
I've noticed.
Right, several times. It happened, I think, in
1844 was the first one.
Right. There's a couple before, and then those were like still small. And when they started, I think in 1889, Charles Taze Russell started publishing The Watchtower. He started getting more readers. Then he started touring. He started going from town to town, like giving speeches. And, he once he started amassing readers, he got a lot of people in it. Originally, they thought that the 144,000 that are mentioned, they thought that was their limit. There's going to be 144,000 of us, like that are going to make it, and that's it. But
literally,
then,
not figuratively.
Exactly, literally. And then when they realized that they had a lot more than 200,000 followers, then they started like, okay, well, the prophecy, the number doesn't make sense with all the followers, so something's off here. Right. And they started editing the belief. Like at first, it was originally that only 144,000 people were going to be saved, and that's it. Charles Taze Russell really believed in a rapture sort of doomsday. Like one of these days, like all the evildoers will be destroyed and the good people will literally be raptured into heaven. That didn't happen. So, but by the end of the 18th century,
it would be 19th century.
I'm sorry, end of the 19th century, right? End of the 19th century, they started gaining a little bit more momentum, and they started, getting thousands of people in. And this is when they started leading up to their 1914 prophecy. They wanted 1914 to be their year, and they were actually they were pretty disillusioned when nothing happened until the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, we had World War I start. Right. And this is where things get really, really crazy, because the Charles Taze Russell died 2 years after that in 1916.
Okay.
And then his successor, J.F. Rutherford, he took control of the Bible students. At this point, we don't have Jehovah's Witnesses yet. It's not we don't have Jehovah's Witnesses until 1931. That's when they were formally declared the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they used Isaiah 43:12, I think, as their basis for it, because that's where God calls on his servants to be my witnesses. You will witness the blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
So J.F. Rutherford takes control in 1916. And he's a lot different. Russell was the weird guy. Russell was into the esoteric. Russell was into the millennium. Russell was into the second coming. Rutherford was a lot more sly, and he was a lot more careful, and he thought more like a lawyer and like a businessman.
Okay.
You know, he thought more in terms of recruiting and in terms of organization and hierarchy, whereas Russell was actually more of a seeker. You know, if you could like sort of fit them into archetypes, I guess you could probably say that Russell was a little bit more naive and well-intentioned. You know, and then Rutherford saw what Russell built. You know, and Rutherford is like, oh, okay, I know how to steer this thing, and this is where things get really, really crazy because Rutherford goes almost bananas. Rutherford is a he. So the Witness publication, the Watchtower Tracting Society starts off as a Zionist publication company.
Okay.
They publish, you know, like pro-Israel stuff, and Rutherford. In the at the beginning of the 1930s, this is when fascism starts rising up in Europe. You know, with the rise of this is after World War One, when fascism and the strongman authority figures start rising up in Germany. Uh, Rutherford actually switches, and Rutherford starts publishing anti-Semitic stuff
Okay.
in using the Watchtower as a platform. Here, I actually found this cool. I found this website, and it's got this cool little clip. I learned this like probably like in the last 2 weeks. Here, where's that window at? There we go. I found this in the last 2 weeks reading up to this. I didn't. I've been writing my book for like a year and a half now, and I never stumbled into this Nazi stuff, it blew my mind when I started reading into this. But allegedly, J.F. Rutherford. So Rutherford wrote a here. Where is it? Okay. Rutherford, in 1933, a declaration regarding the Jehovah's Witnesses ministry and its objectives was adopted by Jehovah's Witnesses at an assembly in Berlin. Copies were sent to all high government officials, and millions more were distributed to the public. On Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, here it is. Early the following year, a personal letter regarding the situation was written by J.F. Rutherford to Adolf Hitler and delivered to him by a special messenger. Then the entire worldwide brotherhood went into action. So when J.F. Rutherford saw that Hitler started taking power,
right,
he said, we're going to get on his good side, and we're going to send him a letter, and we're going to tell him that the witnesses actually agree with all of the Germans' points of view on ethics. In that letter, and this is called the letter to Hitler. You can actually look it up. J.F. Rutherford's letter to Hitler. Rutherford pretty much condones everything that the German nationalist party is doing. Then he's saying, "Hey, just please don't turn your back on us." You know,
right?
We won't preach anymore in Germany. We won't preach, but please let Jehovah's Witnesses meet and pray together because that's what we want to do. Hitler didn't like that, and
I was going to say he wouldn't actually. What I know of him, he wouldn't have actually agreed to that.
No, and here's where things get dark. J.F. Rutherford wasn't he was a pacifist and he was anti-war, but he hated the Catholics. So J.F. Rutherford on all his magazines every month, he would bash the Catholics. So the Catholics got tired of him, and the Catholics told Hitler to ban Jehovah's Witness operations in Germany, and Hitler did it.
Yeah, because he was part of the Catholic Church.
Exactly. So Hitler banned the Jehovah's Witnesses from operating in Germany. Rutherford, he gets mad, and he's like, "Hey, we're agreeing to all your Nazi stuff." So then he says, "You know what? Okay, let's take it full scale." And then I think in what's the date here? I don't have the date here, man, but I think it's 1934. It's when he publishes a second piece, and this is actually the one that the witnesses cannot get rid of today. It's in some of their literature, and they don't like this.
Right.
It's called a Declaration of Facts, where the witnesses go full on anti-Semitic and talk about how the Jewish man has always tried to control government, and how the Jewish man should not be allowed, power, because they're the ones who turn on Jesus, and they go full anti-Semitic, and again in an attempt to get Hitler to leave them alone.
Okay.
Hitler at this point says, "No, I'm not going to do anything. I don't like you guys." So then J.F. Rutherford flip-flops, and he starts threatening Hitler in his magazines, and he starts telling Hitler, if you don't, let us preach, God will have his fury on you and your party.
Mm.
And at this point, J. Rutherford is losing his mind. And if you go to the literature, the Jehovah's Witness literature, everything on J. F. Rutherford is blank from 1934 till 1940, and I think he died in 41. So those last like 7 years of J. F. Rutherford's life, he just completely he went bananas, and he lost all what he worked for.
Right.
And after that, that was like those were the Russell and then J. F. Rutherford were the first two people who really shaped the witnesses and the way that it went. And then after that, they sort of stuck to their story about how um, the governing body is, and having a board pretty much is the right way to run a religion.
Right.
But that's
Instead
how
of
it
just
started.
making it one guy at the top, they decided to have a board of
Exactly.
people at the top.
Yeah.
I think the
They sort
Seventh
of
Day Adventists
saw.
are also like that as well.
Yeah, they learned their lesson from seeing Jay Rutherford and how they saw how one person at the top isn't really the way to go, and they didn't want the next person to have the same political problems that Jay Rutherford had, where one year you're literally preaching anti-Semitic stuff, and then the next year you're threatening Hitler because you're mad that he didn't take your side. So
Yeah.
that's how the Jehovah's Witnesses started.